The emergency sirens wailed across the crystal spires of Resonant Prime as another refugee fleet limped into orbit. Ambassador Thane pressed his crystalline palm against the viewing port and watched the broken ships struggle toward the station. These vessels had once been the pride of the Tidal Confederation, their blue hulls gleaming like ocean waves. Now they were scarred and leaking atmosphere, carrying the last survivors of 3 different worlds. "How many this time?" asked Council Prime Minister Valix, his crystal form flickering with stress patterns that painted the walls in shifting orange light. 47,000, Thane replied, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that marked his species. It's all that remains of the coral systems. The swarmers had taken another star system. The biomechanical horrors had swept through the coral worlds like a plague, their living ships stripping away everything organic before moving on to the next target. 17 systems had fallen in the past 6 months, each one consumed completely. The Galactic Federation's combined fleets had thrown everything they had at the swarmers, only to watch their forces dissolve like morning mist. Valix's crystal body pulsed with deep red patterns of grief. The Drifter High Command reports total loss of their 7th fleet. The Tidals have nothing left to send. Our own forces... He paused, the light within his form dimming. We have perhaps 200 ships remaining across all Federation worlds. The viewing port showed the grim reality of their situation. The space around Resonant Prime was filled with refugee vessels from dozens of species. The elegant drifter cloud ships that once danced through gas giant atmospheres now hung motionless, their crews too traumatized to fly. Tidal deep-sea vessels leaked precious water into the void. Even the mighty resonant crystal ships, once thought unbreakable, bore the scars of swarmer bioweapons. "There is one option," Thane said quietly. "The Intelligence Division has completed their analysis of the Deathworld species." Valix's form brightened with curiosity. "The ones from the Yellow Star, the bipeds who call themselves human? They've achieved basic faster-than-light travel within the last 50 years. Their homeworld is classified as Class 12 hostile environment. The surface is covered in deadly weather patterns, poisonous plant life, and predatory animals that hunt in coordinated groups. The species itself shows remarkable adaptability to combat situations." The Prime Minister's crystal face formed what might have been a frown. "Combat situations? What does that mean?" Thane activated a holographic display that showed footage gathered by Federation scout ships. The images revealed human military exercises, their weapon systems, and most disturbing of all, their historical records. They wage war against their own kind. Not for resources or territory, but for concepts they call ideology and religion. They have refined the art of killing to a science. The hologram showed human soldiers moving through hostile terrain, their faces painted with mud and leaves. They carried weapons designed for one purpose: to kill other humans. The footage revealed tactics that no Federation species had ever developed. Humans used deception, ambush, and coordinated attacks. They fought at night when most species would sleep. They used their own dead as cover and their wounded as bait. "This is disturbing," Valix said, his form cycling through colors of unease. "They fight their own kind? Constantly. They've been at war for their entire recorded history. But here's what makes them unique among all known species. They win. When faced with extinction, they become more dangerous, not less. When their cities are destroyed, they build new ones. When their armies are defeated, they train better soldiers." The hologram shifted to show human space. Their ships were crewed by Federation standards, built with primitive materials and basic technology. But they were functional, built to last, and most importantly, built to fight. Human stations weren't the elegant spires of resonant architecture, or the flowing forms of tidal design. They were fortresses, bristling with weapons and armor. "They have no concept of surrender," Thane continued. "Their military doctrine includes something called total war, where the entire population becomes involved in the conflict. They transform their entire civilization into a weapon. Valex's form dimmed with worry. And you believe these Deathworlders can help us? I believe they might be our only hope. The swarmers have overwhelmed every civilized species they've encountered. Our weapons are designed to disable, not destroy. Our tactics focus on minimal casualties and peaceful resolution. But the swarmers don't negotiate. They don't retreat. They consume everything in their path. The viewing port showed another refugee ship arriving, this one barely holding together. The vessel had once been a resonant exploration craft, its crystal hull now cracked and leaking light. Only a few hundred survivors remained from what had been a crew of thousands. Perhaps, Thane said carefully, we need to fight fire with fire. The swarmers are predators from their own death world. Maybe only another death world species can stop them. Valex was quiet for a long moment, his crystal form cycling through complex patterns of thought. The Council will never approve contact with such a violent species. The risk is extinction, Thane interrupted. The swarmers will reach the core worlds within 3 months. When they do, 10,000 years of Federation civilization will be consumed in weeks. These humans might be our only chance. The Prime Minister's form pulsed with decision. Make the contact, but be careful, Ambassador. If these humans are as dangerous as you suggest, we might be trading one threat for another. Thane's crystal body flickered with patterns of determination. I'll take the diplomatic vessel Harmony's edge. If the humans agree to help, I'll bring back their finest military representatives. If they refuse, he paused, watching another refugee ship struggle into orbit. If they refuse, then we'll face the swarmers alone. The ambassador turned away from the viewing port and walked toward the docking bay. Behind him, the crystal spires of resonant prime gleamed in the light of their dying sun. Soon, even this last sanctuary might fall to the swarmers. The Federation had built their civilization on principles of peace, cooperation, and mutual understanding. But peace couldn't stop the biomechanical horrors that were sweeping across the galaxy as his ship prepared for the journey to Earth. Thane wondered if they were about to make a deal with something worse than the swarmers themselves. The humans were killers, predators from a world that had forged them in constant violence. But they were also survivors, and right now, survival was all that mattered. The Harmony's Edge launched into hyperspace, carrying the Federation's desperate plea to the death world called Earth. Behind them, the refugee fleets continued to arrive, each one carrying fewer survivors than the last. The swarmers were coming, and soon there would be nowhere left to run. 3 weeks after the Harmony's Edge departed for Earth, the United Earthship Valiant dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Federation territory. The human vessel looked nothing like the elegant ships of the Federation fleet. Where alien ships curved and flowed like works of art, the Valiant was all angles and armor plating. Its hull bristled with weapons that served only one purpose: to kill. Captain Reed stood in the ship's command center, studying the tactical displays that showed the Federation's final defense line. The Nexus system contained the last major Federation fleet, protecting the core worlds from the approaching swarmers. What he saw made him shake his head in disbelief. They've got their ships arranged in a perfect formation, he said to his tactical officer, Lieutenant Cross. Beautiful to look at, but tactically useless. First enemy salvo will break their lines. Cross nodded, her fingers dancing over the weapon controls. Their ships don't even have proper armor. Look at those hulls. They're designed for beauty, not battle. The resonant ships are made of crystal that will shatter on impact. The tidal vessels are built for underwater pressure, not space combat. The communication system crackled to life. Human vessel, this is Admiral Sen of the Resonant Fleet. Please maintain safe distance and prepare for inspection. Reed activated the reply channel. Admiral, this is Captain Reed of the Terran Defense Force. We're here to help with your swarmer problem. What's your tactical situation? Tactical situation? The alien's voice carried harmonic overtones that suggested confusion. We are prepared to defend our positions according to established protocols. The swarmers will arrive within the next few hours. Protocols? Reed exchanged glances with Cross. Admiral, with respect, this isn't a parade ground exercise. The enemy is coming to kill everything in this system. What's your battle plan? There was a long pause before Admiral Sen responded. We will maintain defensive positions and attempt to disable enemy vessels with minimal casualties. Standard Federation military doctrine prohibits actions that might result in unnecessary loss of life. Cross stared at the communication panel. Sir, did he just say they're trying to minimize casualties in a war for survival? Reed rubbed his forehead. Admiral Sen, please transmit your fleet specifications and defensive capabilities. We need to understand what we're working with. The data that came through made both humans wince. The Federation ships were equipped with energy weapons designed to disable rather than destroy. Their shields were programmed to distribute damage evenly across the hull to prevent catastrophic failure. Most importantly, their crews had never experienced actual combat. They were explorers, scientists, and diplomats wearing military uniforms. They're going to be slaughtered, Cross said quietly. The long-range sensors suddenly screamed warnings. The swarmer fleet was dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. Reed watched the tactical display as dozens of biomechanical ships appeared, their organic hulls pulsing with alien life. The swarmer vessels looked like giant insects crossed with warships, their surfaces covered in weapons that grew from their living flesh. All Federation ships, this is Admiral Sen, assume defensive formation Delta 7. Prepare to disable enemy vessels. Reed activated the fleet-wide communication channel. All ships, this is Captain Reed, forget the formations. The enemy isn't going to line up and fight fair. Break into combat pairs and prepare for close-quarters battle. Captain Reed, Admiral Sen's voice carried disapproval, please maintain proper formation. We cannot risk civilian casualties or unnecessary destruction. Admiral, those ships are coming to eat your civilization. There won't be any civilians left to worry about. The first swarmer attack began with a coordinated assault on the Federation's left flank. The biomechanical ships moved with predatory grace, their weapons firing projectiles that looked more like living creatures than ammunition. The Federation's energy shields held for approximately 30 seconds before the organic weapons began eating through the barriers. The Resonant flagship took the first hit. The crystal hull, designed to resonate with harmonious frequencies, shattered like glass when struck by swarmer bioweapons. The crew's screams echoed across the communication channels as their beautiful ship broke apart. All ships, break formation! Reed shouted, engage evasive maneuvers. But the Federation crews didn't know how to fight. When their ships took damage, they followed evacuation protocols instead of damage control procedures. When their weapons were destroyed, they tried to surrender rather than ram the enemy. The tidal ships leaked water and atmosphere, their crews drowning in their own life support systems. The Valiant dove into the battle like a shark among minnows. Reed's crew didn't hesitate when the first swarmer bioweapon struck their hull. Damage control teams rushed into depressurized sections wearing emergency suits. When the main power grid failed, they switched to backup systems that kept the weapons online. Target their feeding appendages, Cross called out, studying the enemy. Ships, those organic weapons need nutrients to keep firing. The Valiant's kinetic weapons, crude metal projectiles, accelerated to incredible speeds, punched through swarmer hulls with devastating effectiveness. Where Federation energy weapons had been absorbed by the organic armor, human bullets tore through flesh and bone. The first swarmer ship to face the Valiant died screaming, its biomechanical systems hemorrhaging into space. How are they doing this? Admiral Sen's voice cracked with disbelief. Their weapons are primitive. Their ship is barely more advanced than our cargo vessels. Reed watched another Federation ship die, its crew evacuating in escape pods that the swarmers immediately targeted. Admiral, they're not trying to disable you, they're trying to eat you. Start acting like it. The battle raged for 6 hours. By the end, 2/3 of the Federation fleet had been destroyed or disabled. The surviving ships limped away from the battlefield, their crews traumatized by their first taste of real war. But the swarmers had also taken losses. 7 of their biomechanical ships had been destroyed, all by the single human vessel. As the enemy fleet regrouped at the system's edge, Reed found himself surrounded by alien survivors. The Federation commanders gathered around the Valiant's tactical display, staring at the human ship's performance data with something approaching awe. "You killed them," Admiral Sen said, his crystal form flickering with patterns of shock. "You actually killed them. That's what war means," Reed replied. "Kill the enemy before they kill you. Everything else is just conversation." Cross pulled up the casualty reports. "We lost 47 crew members, hull integrity at 60%, weapon systems at 40% efficiency. We can fight maybe one more engagement before we need repairs. And the Federation fleet? 17 ships remaining out of 63. Most of those are too damaged to fight effectively." Admiral Sen's form dimmed with grief. "Captain Reed, we don't know how to do this. For 10,000 years, the Federation has solved problems through negotiation and compromise. We've never faced an enemy that wanted to destroy us completely." Reed looked at the tactical display, watching the swarmer fleet prepare for another attack. "Then you better learn fast, Admiral, because they're coming back, and next time they'll be ready for us." The communication system crackled with incoming messages from the core worlds. The Federation Council was demanding explanations for the massive casualties. Some were calling for the humans to be removed from the battlefield. Others wanted to know why a single primitive ship had outperformed their entire fleet. "Sir," Cross said quietly, "I'm getting reports from Earth. The government is mobilizing additional forces. They're calling it a full war footing." Reed nodded grimly. "Good, because what we just saw was just the beginning. The real war starts now." The footage from the Nexus system battle played on every screen across Earth. News anchors struggled to find words as they watched alien civilizations being consumed by biomechanical horrors. The images of Federation ships breaking apart, their crews dying in the vacuum of space, stirred something deep in humanity's collective consciousness. President Walsh stood in the emergency session of the Global Defense Council, watching the same footage for the 10th time. Around the table sat representatives from every major nation, their faces grim with the realization that Earth was no longer isolated from galactic threats. The swarmers had consumed 17 star systems, and according to the Federation's projections, they would reach Earth within 2 years. "The initial assessment was correct," General Kim reported, her voice steady despite the horror on the screens. "These swarmers are unlike anything we've encountered. They don't negotiate, they don't retreat, and they don't leave survivors. They're an extinction-level threat to every organic species in the galaxy." Director Ross from the Intelligence Division activated another display. "Our analysis of the Federation's military capabilities shows they're completely unprepared for this type of warfare. Their entire civilization developed without major conflicts. They have no concept of total war, no understanding of military strategy, and no weapons designed to kill." "But Captain Reed's ship performed well," President Walsh noted. "One human vessel against an entire enemy fleet." "That's what concerns me," Admiral Stone said, leaning forward. "The Valiant wasn't even a military vessel by our standards. It was a diplomatic escort, lightly armed and carrying minimal crew. If one of our smallest ships can outfight their entire fleet, what does that say about their chances against the swarmers?" The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Federation represented thousands of worlds and trillions of sentient beings. If they fell to the swarmers, Earth would face the biomechanical horrors alone. Humanity's survival depended on keeping the Federation alive long enough to mount a proper defense. "We need to mobilize everything," President Walsh decided. "Full war production, military conscription, and emergency powers. The Federation is our first line of defense, but we need to be ready if that line fails." Within hours, the transformation began. Factory assembly lines that had been producing consumer goods switched to military hardware. Shipyards that built cargo vessels started laying down the keels of warships. The global economy shifted into something that hadn't been seen since the world wars of the previous century. Total war production. But humanity's response went beyond simple military preparation. The footage from the Nexus system had awakened something primal in the human psyche. These weren't just aliens being attacked. They were refugees, families, children fleeing from an implacable enemy. The same instinct that had driven humans to fight for their tribes now expanded to include their galactic neighbors. Dr. Mills, the head of the xenobiology department, found herself leading a crash program to understand swarmer biology. We need to know how they think, how they breed, how they die, she told her research team. The Federation tried to fight them with conventional weapons. We need to find their weak points. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Mills was studying the biomechanical weapons recovered from the Nexus system when she noticed something odd. The organic components weren't just alive. They were networked, sharing information through some kind of biological communication system. They're not individual ships, she realized. They're parts of a larger organism. The entire swarmer fleet is one giant hive mind. This discovery changed everything. Traditional military tactics assumed that each enemy ship was independent, with its own captain making decisions. But the swarmers operated as a single entity, their movements coordinated by some kind of biological supercomputer. It explained why they were so effective in battle. They could coordinate attacks with perfect precision because they were literally one mind controlling thousands of bodies. If we can disrupt their communication network, Dr. Mills proposed, we might be able to break their coordination. The Weapons Research Division began developing new types of ammunition specifically designed to target biological systems. Chemical weapons that would disrupt neural pathways. Biological agents that would attack the organic components of swarmer ships. Electronic warfare systems that could interfere with their biological communications. Meanwhile, Admiral Stone was building the new Terran Defense Fleet. The ships coming off the production lines bore no resemblance to the elegant vessels of the Federation. Human warships were built like medieval castles, thick armor, multiple redundant systems, and weapons designed to cause maximum damage. The aliens fight like they're still playing by rules, Stone explained to his staff. Honor, minimal casualties, civilized warfare, but the swarmers don't follow any rules. They're predators, and the only thing predators understand is superior force. The UES Devastator was the first of the new class of human warships. Its armor was thick enough to survive direct hits from swarmer bioweapons. Its weapons were designed to punch through organic hulls and keep firing even when the ship was heavily damaged. Most importantly, its crew was trained to keep fighting even when their ship was dying. Captain Reed returned to Earth aboard the damaged Valiant, his crew exhausted but alive. The debriefing sessions with military intelligence lasted for weeks, as every detail of the battle was analyzed and incorporated into new training programs. The Federation crews panicked, Reed reported. When their ships took damage, they evacuated. Instead of fighting, when their weapons were destroyed, they tried to surrender. They've never faced an enemy that wanted to kill them all. And the swarmers? Admiral Stone asked. They're not just predators. They're intelligent predators. They adapted to our tactics during the battle. By the end, they were targeting our weapon systems specifically, trying to disable us rather than destroy us. Why would they do that? Reed's expression darkened. Because they wanted to study us. They're learning how we fight, and they're getting better at it. The second wave of human ships began arriving at Federation space within weeks. Unlike the single escort vessel that had fought at Nexus, this was a proper battle fleet. 27 warships, each one bristling with weapons and armor. The Federation commanders who met them were shocked by the human vessel's aggressive design. They look like weapons themselves, Admiral Sen observed, watching the human fleet take position. There's no beauty in them, no elegance, just pure function. That's the point, Captain Reed replied. We're not here to look impressive. We're here to win. The human fleet didn't just bring more firepower. They brought tactics that the Federation had never seen. They established forward bases in asteroid fields, using the rocky debris as cover and ammunition. They created supply lines that could operate under constant attack. They began training Federation crews in human warfare, teaching them to fight like predators instead of philosophers, but the most shocking change was in the human crews themselves. The reports from Earth showed a species mobilizing for total war. Factories worked around the clock. Children learned to operate weapons in school. Scientists developed new forms of destruction. The entire civilization was transforming itself into a weapon. They're becoming what they need to be, Ambassador Thane observed, watching human training exercises. The swarmers awoke something in them that had been sleeping. They're not just helping us anymore, they're preparing for their own survival. The communication channels buzzed with reports from across human space. New shipyards were being built. Entire planets were being converted to military production. The human population was growing more militarized by the day, their peaceful society reshaping itself for war. We asked for their help, Admiral Sen said quietly. But I think we got more than we bargained for. The next swarmer attack was different. When the biomechanical ships arrived, they found human vessels waiting for them. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Two species of predators, each one evolved for warfare, locked in mortal combat among the stars. The Federation watched in awe and terror as humanity revealed what they truly were, not just another species, but the product of a world that had forged them in constant violence. The Deathworlders had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Battle of the Outer Rim lasted 17 days and changed the course of the war. For the first time in their species' history, the swarmers faced an enemy that fought back with equal ferocity. The biomechanical horrors that had consumed 17 star systems found themselves struggling against human tactics that defied everything they understood about warfare. Admiral Stone watched the tactical displays from the command bridge of the UES Devastator as his fleet engaged the swarmer forces around the mining world of Keto 7. The battle wasn't going according to any traditional military doctrine. Instead of neat formations and coordinated attacks, the human ships moved like a pack of wolves, using the asteroid field as both cover and ammunition. Target their supply ships, Stone ordered. Don't waste time on the warriors. Cut off their food, and they'll starve. The swarmers had never encountered this type of strategic thinking. For millennia, they had overwhelmed their enemies through sheer numbers and biological superiority. Their victims had always fought defensive battles, trying to protect their worlds and populations. But the humans attacked differently. They targeted the swarmers' breeding vessels, their command nodes, and their resource gatherers. Captain Reed commanded the UES Valiant, now rebuilt and upgraded with new weapon systems. His ship dove through the asteroid field using chunks of rock as shields while firing kinetic rounds at swarmer bioships. The aliens' organic armor, designed to absorb energy weapons, proved vulnerable to simple metal projectiles fired at incredible speeds. They're trying to surround us, Lieutenant Cross reported, watching the tactical display as swarmer ships moved to encircle the human fleet. Let them, Reed replied. All ships implement pattern delta, draw them into the asteroid field. The human fleet retreated deeper into the rocky debris, appearing to flee from the superior numbers of swarmer vessels. But this was no retreat. The asteroids had been prepared with hidden weapons platforms and mining charges. As the swarmers pursued, the humans triggered explosions that turned the entire asteroid field into a weapons system. The biomechanical ships, accustomed to the emptiness of space, found themselves trapped in a maze of flying rocks and explosions. Their coordination broke down as chunks of stone severed the biological connections between ships. For the first time, the swarmer hive mind experienced something unprecedented. Confusion. Dr. Mills watched the battle from the research vessel UES Discovery, her team analyzing every piece of data from the engagement. The breakthrough had come from studying captured swarmer bioweapons. The organic components weren't just alive. They were networked through a complex system of biological quantum entanglement. Their entire fleet is one organism, she explained to Admiral Stone during a brief lull in the fighting. Every ship, every weapon, every swarmer creature is connected through biological quantum fields. They don't just communicate, they share consciousness. How do we use that against them? We developed a biological weapon that targets their quantum entanglement system. It's like a virus for their hive mind. Once it spreads, it disrupts their coordination and causes their ships to turn on each other. The weapon was deployed during the second week of the battle. Human ships fired special projectiles that contained the biological agent, designed to spread through the swarmer fleet like a plague. The effect was immediate and devastating. Swarmer ships began firing on their own forces, their biological systems confused and turning against themselves, but the swarmers adapted faster than anyone expected. Within hours, they began isolating infected ships, cutting off the biological connections to prevent the spread of the human virus. The hive mind was learning, evolving its tactics to counter human strategies. "They're smart," Captain Reed observed. Watching swarmer ships deliberately sacrifice infected vessels to save the rest of the fleet. Smarter than we thought. The battle escalated when the swarmers revealed a new weapon, massive biomechanical creatures that could survive in space without ships. These living weapons were the size of asteroids, covered in organic armor and bristling with biological weapons. They moved through space like giant spaceborne predators, hunting human vessels with predatory intelligence. "What are those things?" Cross asked, staring at the tactical display as the massive creatures approached the human fleet. "They're not ships," Dr. Mills realized. "They're actual swarmers." The biomechanical vessels were just tools. These are the real enemy. The giant spaceborne swarmers attacked with a ferocity that shocked even the human crews. They didn't just fire weapons, they attempted to grab human ships with massive organic appendages, trying to drag them into feeding maws large enough to swallow a cruiser whole. The UES Devastator found itself grappled by one of the massive creatures, its armor buckling under the pressure of organic tentacles. Admiral Stone refused to abandon ship, instead ordering his crew to fire the main guns directly into the creature's feeding apparatus. "All available power to weapons," Stone ordered. "If we're going down, we're taking this thing with us." The battle became a close-quarters nightmare as human ships fought hand-to-hand combat with living enemies the size of space stations. Boarding parties used cutting tools and explosives to fight their way through organic corridors filled with smaller swarmer creatures. The human Marines, trained for combat on Earth's hostile surface, found themselves surprisingly effective in the alien environment. "These things bleed," Sergeant Parker reported over the communications system as his squad fought through a swarmer feeding chamber. "They feel pain and they can die, just like anything else." The turning point came when human engineers discovered that the giant swarmers were vulnerable to their own biological weapons. The creatures' massive size made them perfect targets for the quantum entanglement virus. When infected, they lost coordination and began attacking each other in a feeding frenzy. "They're eating themselves?" Dr. Mills observed with horrified fascination. "The virus is making them hungry and they're feeding on each other." The Battle of the Outer Rim ended when the surviving swarmer forces retreated for the first time in their species' history. The biomechanical ships and giant spaceborne creatures fled deeper into unexplored space, leaving behind the wreckage of the most devastating battle the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Stone surveyed the aftermath from his damaged command bridge. The human fleet had lost 12 ships and over 3,000 crew members. But the swarmers had lost something more important, their reputation for invincibility. For the first time, they had been forced to retreat. "Sir, communications officer." Davis reported, "We're getting reports from across Federation space. The swarmers are pulling back from their forward positions. They're consolidating their forces." "They're scared," Stone realized. "They've never faced an enemy that could hurt them this badly." The victory celebrations across Federation worlds were premature. Intelligence reports showed that the swarmers weren't giving up, they were regrouping. The hive mind was analyzing human tactics, learning from each encounter. The next attack would be different, more focused, more strategic, But the swarmers had made one critical mistake. In their retreat, they had revealed the location of their breeding worlds and command centers. Human scout ships following the fleeing biomechanical vessels discovered the heart of the Swarmer Empire, a cluster of worlds where the hive mind had been growing for millions of years. They're not just predators, Dr. Mills concluded from her analysis of the intelligence data. They're gardeners. They consume worlds to feed their breeding grounds. Every star system they've destroyed was being converted into nurseries for new swarmers. The discovery changed everything. The war wasn't about territory or resources. It was about survival. The swarmers weren't just trying to conquer the galaxy. They were trying to transform it into a breeding ground for their species. Every world they consumed became part of their biological empire. Admiral Stone stared at the star charts showing the swarmer breeding worlds. How many planets? 43 confirmed systems, Intelligence Officer Blake reported, each one containing billions of swarmer creatures in various stages of development. The hive mind isn't just in the ships, it's in the planets themselves. The implications were staggering. The swarmers weren't just a fleet of biomechanical ships. They were an entire civilization of living worlds, each one capable of producing new fleets. The war wasn't against an enemy. It was against a way of life that threatened to consume everything organic in the galaxy. We need to hit them at their source, Stone decided. Destroy their breeding worlds before they can produce more fleets. But even as the human fleet prepared for the next phase of the war, reports were coming in from Earth. The swarmers hadn't just retreated. They had launched a counterattack. Long-range biomechanical ships were approaching human space, carrying weapons designed specifically to counter human tactics. The war was escalating, and both sides were learning to fight with increasing desperation. The swarmers had discovered that humanity was a threat to their existence. In response, they were preparing to eliminate the Deathworld species before it could spread further into the galaxy. The real war was just beginning. The warning came too late. Swarmer bioships had been traveling for months through the dark space between stars, their organic hulls adapted for long-range stealth missions. When they finally struck human space, they hit not military targets, but civilian colonies, agricultural worlds, and research stations. The attacks were coordinated, simultaneous, and devastating. Director Hayes stood in the emergency command center beneath Geneva, watching their casualty reports stream in from across human space. New Vancouver, 3 million dead. Europa Station, completely consumed. The agricultural world of harvest, stripped bare in 6 hours. The swarmers had learned from their encounters with human military forces and adapted their tactics accordingly. They're not trying to fight our fleets, General Kim observed, studying the attack patterns. They're trying to break our will to fight. They're targeting our families, our food supplies, our industrial capacity. But the swarmers had miscalculated. They had studied human military behavior and assumed that attacking civilians would demoralize the species. Instead, they triggered something that the Federation had never witnessed: humanity's total war response. The attacks on human worlds didn't break humanity's will to fight. They unleashed it completely. President Walsh's address to the Global Defense Council was broadcast across every human world and station. Her words were simple, direct, and carried the weight of species-wide determination. They have attacked our children. They have consumed our homes. They have declared war not just on our military, but on our very existence. Therefore, we respond in kind. The transformation that followed was unprecedented in galactic history. Every human world, every station, every ship became part of the war effort. Children as young as 12 learned to operate defense systems. Scientists abandoned peaceful research to develop new weapons. Artists created propaganda that inspired civilians to fight with military precision. Admiral Stone received new orders that would have shocked the Federation commanders. Total war authorization. Human fleets were no longer restricted to military targets. They were authorized to destroy swarmer breeding worlds, command centers, and any biological infrastructure that supported the hive mind. There would be no prisoners, no negotiations, no mercy. They wanted to see what humans are capable of when threatened, Stone told his fleet commanders during the final briefing. Now they're going to find out? The assault on the Swarmer homeworld began with a coordinated attack by 50 human warships, supported by weapons that Dr. Mills and her team had spent months developing. The biological quantum virus had been refined into something far more deadly, a weapon that didn't just disrupt Swarmer coordination but actually rewrote their biological programming. We've turned their own biology against them, Dr. Mills explained as the fleet approached the massive organic world that served as the Swarmer capital. The virus makes them hungry for their own kind. It spreads through their quantum entanglement network and forces them to consume each other. Captain Reed commanded the lead assault group aboard the rebuilt UES Valiant. The ship had been upgraded with weapons specifically designed for this mission, biological warfare systems that could sterilize entire planets as they approached the Swarmer homeworld. The scope of the enemy's civilization became clear. The planet itself was alive, its surface covered in organic structures that pulsed with biological activity. Massive biomechanical ships grew from the planet's surface like fruit on a tree. The entire world was one giant organism designed to produce Swarmer fleets for galactic conquest. Target the planetary core, Admiral Stone ordered. We're not just destroying their military, we're destroying their ability to reproduce. The human fleet opened fire with weapons that the Federation would have considered war crimes. Biological agents designed to kill everything organic. Chemical weapons that turned the planet's own atmosphere into poison. Kinetic weapons that punched through the planetary crust to reach the biological core. The Swarmer response was immediate and desperate. Biomechanical ships launched from the planet's surface, but they were uncoordinated, confused by the biological virus spreading through their network. Many of them turned on each other, feeding frantically as their programming was rewritten by human weapons. They're eating their own planet, Lieutenant Cross observed, watching the tactical display as Swarmer creatures began consuming the organic structures on the world's surface. The virus is making them cannibalize everything. The battle for the Swarmer homeworld lasted 3 days. Human ships systematically destroyed every biological structure on the planet, while the virus spread through the global organism. By the end, the world that had given birth to the galactic threat was nothing but a barren rock, its organic components consumed by creatures driven mad with artificial hunger. But the humans weren't finished. Intelligence reports showed 17 other Swarmer breeding worlds scattered across their territory. Admiral Stone's orders were clear: complete extinction. No Swarmer world would be left intact. No breeding ground would be spared. The species that had threatened galactic civilization would be eliminated entirely. The campaign that followed shocked even the human crews involved. Fleet after fleet of human warships swept through Swarmer space, systematically destroying every biological structure they encountered. They hunted down fleeing biomechanical ships across dozens of star systems. They used the Swarmer's own biological weapons against them, turning entire fleets into cannibalistic nightmares. Dr. Mills coordinated the biological warfare effort from her laboratory ship. Her team had developed weapons that targeted specific aspects of Swarmer biology, viruses that disrupted their hive mind, chemicals that caused their organic armor to dissolve, and most devastatingly, biological agents that made them consume themselves. "We're not just winning," she reported to Admiral Stone. "We're making sure they can never threaten anyone again." The final Swarmer stronghold fell after a 6-week siege. The biomechanical defenders fought with desperate fury, but human tactics had evolved beyond anything the aliens could counter. The humans used the Swarmer's own biology against them, turning their greatest strength into their ultimate weakness. When the war ended, it ended not with surrender but with extinction. The Swarmer species, which had consumed 17 star systems and threatened the entire galaxy, was completely eliminated. Their biomechanical ships drifted dead in space. Their breeding worlds were lifeless rocks. The hive mind that had connected billions of creatures was silent forever, Ambassador, Thane arrived at Earth for the victory celebrations, but what he found disturbed him more than the war itself. Human civilization had transformed completely during the conflict. Their cities were fortified. Their children played games that simulated the battles they had just won. Their leaders were already planning for the next potential threat. "You saved us," Thane told President Walsh during the formal ceremony. "The Federation owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid." Walsh's response chilled him. "We didn't do it for you, Ambassador. We did it for ourselves. The swarmers made the mistake of threatening human territory. We simply responded appropriately." The victory parades across human worlds celebrated not just the defeat of the swarmers, but the emergence of humanity as a galactic power. The species that had been contacted for help had instead taken control of their own destiny. They had faced an extinction-level threat and not just survived, but eliminated it completely. As Thane prepared his final report to the Federation Council, he reflected on what had truly happened. The Federation had asked humanity for help against the swarmers. But in doing so, they had awakened something that had been sleeping in the galaxy's deadliest corner. They had unleashed the Deathworlders upon the stars. The war was over, but the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity was no longer the primitive species that needed protection. They were the apex predators of known space, and everyone else was just prey waiting to be classified. The Federation had begged for help, and humanity had delivered. But the price of that salvation was the end of the peaceful galaxy that had existed before. The age of human dominance had begun, and there was no going back.